Hello, I'm sure you know what this is. It's a recorder. It's called a descant recorder. I thought this morning I would show you some other instruments rather than stringed ones. So that's the descant recorder. You might have one yourself. You might do recorders at school, or your brother or your sister may have one. This one is a bit bigger and it's called the treble recorder. Now I wonder if it's going to sound higher or lower than the descant. Listen. Yeah, sounds a bit lower, doesn't it? And this is called the tenor. It's even bigger than the treble and the descant. Let's hear what sound this makes. It's a lot lower, isn't it? So you see, the bigger the recorder, the lower the note. The descant, the treble, and the tenor. Right. We'll have a story and then we'll have a song. This is a lovely story, beautiful paintings. It's called Catcher the Windmill Cat, and it's a true story. It happened a long time ago, before there were cars, airplanes, anything like that. A long time ago. And it took place in Holland. There's Catcher the Windmill Cat. It's also true. This story was written about a true event, something that happened, a big storm that happened in Holland and flooded a village. Catcher had an easy life. She lived with Nico the miller in a Dutch village by the sea. While Nico ground grain in his windmill, Catcher chased mice. Up and down the ladder she prowled, searching behind sacks of grain and along beams dusty with flour. Every miller needs a cat like Catcher, Nico told the villagers when they came to buy his flour. At night, Catcher slept on a soft pillow beside Nico. On Sundays, they walked along the dike that protected the village from the sea. Catcher chased seagulls, and Nico watched the storms. One morning, Nico didn't follow Catcher to the mill. He put on his best suit and walked to town. In the evening, he came back with a young woman on his arm. She wore a fine dress and carried a bunch of flowers. Nico carried a bright copper kettle, a bundle of dresses, and a brand new broom. "It's a plain house, Lena," Nico said shyly. "It's perfect," Lena said, "just right for a miller and his wife." But that night, when Catcher jumped onto bed, she found Lena lying on her pillow. "Meow," whined Catcher. Nico picked her up. "Run along, Catcher." "Meow," insisted Catcher. Nico closed the curtains around the bed. "Meow," complained Catcher, even louder. The curtains remained closed, and Catcher slept in the kitchen. The next day, Lena began to sweep. She swept the house, she swept the path. She even swept flower dust from Nico when he came home at night. "Oh, take off your wooden shoes before you walk in the house," she scolded. Nico stepped out of his shoes and kissed her. He left a big white smudge on her cheek. Catcher crept past them. She wouldn't let Lena sweep her, but Catcher left a trail of white paw prints, and Lena saw them. "Shoo, Catcher," she cried, "you're too dusty." Life wasn't easy anymore. One day, Catcher woke to the sound of sawing. "I'm making a cradle," Nico said. Lena laid a soft quilt inside. That night, Catcher jumped into the cradle and curled up on the quilt. Soon a baby called Annika was born in the little house by the windmill. She was small and pink, and she slept in the cradle. Catcher didn't mind. There was room enough for both of them, but Lena said, "Shoo, Katja, you'll make Annika sneeze." Katja played with Annika when Lena wasn't looking. Katja battled the ribbons on the cradle and Annika waved her arms. Katja wriggled under the quilt and Annika kicked her legs. Katja jumped from side to side and set the cradle rocking. Annika giggled and Katja meowed. This was more fun than chasing mice. But when Lena heard them, she said, "Shoo, Katja, you'll tip over the cradle." Katja walked across the road and stopped by the door. Lena didn't call her back, so Katja left the house and moved into the windmill. Oh dear. At night she curled up on empty flour sacks and dreamed of soft quilts. Nico brought her a bowl of milk every evening. "Come home, Katja, we miss you." Katja wouldn't go home with Nico, but sometimes when everyone was sleeping, she crept back home and gently rocked the cradle while Annika slept. You see how she's doing that with her front paws there and the back ones there. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered overhead. The wind howled and the rain pounded against the windmill. "We've been through many storms, haven't we?" Nico said, scratching Katja's head. Katja purred. The windmill sails whirled and the great millstones turned. "I won't have a minute's rest till the wind dies down," Nico said. He had to keep grinding the grain between the millstones. If the stones rubbed together, the sparks could start a fire. Katja rubbed against Nico's leg. She would work for as long as he did. Nico hoisted heavy bags of grain to the top of the mill and watched the wheat pour down the millstones. Katja ran up and down the ladder and round the mill. She looked for mice who might sneak in from the storm. All night long the wind roared, the windmill shook, and the millstones groaned. When morning came, the door flew open and Lena came in with a basket of bread and herring for Nico's breakfast. Katja dashed to the house to see Annika. A crowd of villagers ran down the road. "The dike has broken, the sea is flooding the town." Church bells clanged. Water rushed into the house. Katja jumped on Annika's cradle. Lena and Nico waded out of the mill as the cradle swept out of the house. "Annika," cried Lena. "I'll get the boat," yelled Nico. Katja and Annika raced through the flooded streets. Furniture, wagons, and even houses swirled by. Oh dear, the cradle's been washed out into the flood. Can you see it there? And there's Annika and Nico. Some villagers stood on rooftops, others climbed up the dike. "There's a cradle. I pray there's no baby in it. It's sure to capsize." A wagon wheel whirled by and sent the cradle spinning. "Look, there's Katja. It's Annika's cradle." The cradle tipped back and forth, but Katja jumped from side to side and kept Annika safe. Can you see how she's holding the cradle level so it doesn't tip over? The baby doesn't seem to mind, does it? Being rocked to sleep. Oh, poor old Katja is soaking wet. Ah, look, they saved her. Finally, the cradle bumped against the dike. The boat bumped next to it. "Dear Annika," cried Nico as he plucked her from the cradle. "Darling Katja," cried Lena, hugging her tightly. "Meow," said Katja. Annika soon grew too big for her cradle, so Katja slept there on a soft quilt that Lena made just for her. Katja had a busy life. In the morning she played with Annika. All day she chased mice in the windmill, and when she came home at night, she always remembered to lick her paws before she stepped into the house. Isn't that a lovely story? And it's true. Let's finish up with a song, shall we? This is one that you will probably know. I had a little nut tree, nothing would it bear, but a silver nutmeg and a golden pear. The king of Spain's daughter came to visit me, and all for the sake of my little nut tree. I danced over water, skipped over sea, all the birds in the air couldn't catch me. I danced over water, skipped over sea, all the birds in the air couldn't catch me. You try it. See if you can join in. I had a little nut tree, nothing would it bear, but a silver nutmeg and a golden pear. The king's daughter came to visit me, all for the sake of my little nut tree. I danced over water, skipped over sea, all the birds in the air couldn't catch me. I danced over water, skipped over sea, all the birds in the air couldn't catch me. Bye-bye. See you next time.